Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is episode 3 of our engine teardown marathon. Today we're going to be going at this 110 that's already been modified a little bit. We're going to be tearing it all the way down. You guys know the drill as in the other video, and we're going to peek inside and see what we find on this 2009 110 became a 113 CVO for Mr. John Johnson out of Arkansas. So stick with us. Now, if you saw yesterday's episode where we uncovered a lot of little hidden things inside the 2007 110 for Michael, there were a ton of questions about that teardown, and thanks to his son there for jumping in and answering a lot of those questions on the comments section. So I'll answer those questions now. That engine had 55,000 miles on it, but the problem had presented itself virtually since new with the excessive overheating. And of course, his son confirmed a lot of the suspicions that I had just from doing the teardown. If you remember, the oil was completely black. That oil only had 200 miles on it. The bike was meticulously maintained. So we can see that, improper tune and, a problem with the crank, what it can do to oil in a very short period of time is pretty astounding. Now, he also confirmed for me that the bike had been tuned before. It had been tuned twice, in fact, to try to help him deal with all of that incredible heat that was either being created from the loose compression release or because it was sumping, again, generating more heat. Unfortunately, he had it tuned once to try to combat that issue. That didn't work, and someone convinced him to buy another tuner and tune it again, and of course that problem didn't help. He went through multiple sets of exhaust because it was so hot, in fact, that it burned up the exhaust system, and then led to what you guys saw. It's hard to say the chain of events that occurred. A big part of it, we know that with the loose compression release, it would have run lean on that cylinder. They would have tried to combat that with the tune by running it rich. Then that explained the strong fuel smell to the oil. That could have also contributed to the washing down of the cylinder walls and accelerated wear there, which would have increased blow-by. That blow-by could have contributed to the sumping. However, blow-by typically doesn't cause a crooked crank. So it's hard to say which came first, the chicken or the egg in that one. I would say more than likely the crank was already crooked from the factory and the other issues just compounded. So back to this one. This belongs to Mr. Johnson. He owns a 2009 CVO Ultra, and of course it's originally a 110. He had some work done to it in the past. There was some head work, and it's also now a 113. It appears to me that they overbored the stock 110 cylinders to a 4060 bore in order to get it to that 113. So I'm going to suspect that we're going to see some piston slap in here. We'll be able to tell that just quickly by measuring cylinders, and we may get to that unless the damage is just completely obvious. The plan for this engine, we will make it a 117, so that's going to involve case boring, our billet cylinders. We're going to go through the heads and basically fix what needs to be fixed. If they look good, we're just going to freshen them up, okay? No need to redo if we don't have to, but they will get freshened up and just fixed whatever needs to be fixed. Of course, it'll get a full man-of-war crank with a Timken bearing conversion, and then we're completely bulletproofing the primary as well with a Baker tensioner. We're doing a billet cam plate, billet oil pump, American prime clutch. Let's see what all else we have on this one. We are going gear drive, of course, boring the cases, all that type of stuff. Then we'll tune the bike and get it together. So that's the story. Let's see what's on the inside. All right, one of the first things we noticed, he has upgraded these to the forged rocker supports. These are not stock. Wear on the Wear on the rocker tips look pretty good. Wear inside the rockers look fair. Let's see what we've got quite a bit of oil saturation here in our breather element. Same, not a tremendous amount of wear there, but we do have the forged rocker supports. Running the Screaming Eagle push rods. One of the things I'm looking for on these push rods, these are even, yeah, they're tapered top, but they're still pretty fat. It's not uncommon for people to hear a tapping noise and assume it's all this up here. It's not unusual for me to pull using some people's push rods, and you can actually see witness marks in this area here where the push rod is actually tapping the top of the push rod tube. I don't see that in this case. I do see it right here though. You can see the witness marks there. So it may have had a little bit of a tapping noise there. That one has a few little marks on it as well. But overall, pretty good shape. The tips down on the tappet side, that's worn quite a bit. That one's not too bad. One of them is worn quite a bit, so we'll be mindful of that. Ooh, well, this is not a good sign. Wasn't coming from the top end, but I got a feeling we're going to get in here and find quite a bit of blow-by and a good bit of carbon. If we look at the automatic compression release here, we can see all of this sludge and build up there. So we may have a bit of a blow-by situation going on here. Okay, now this one is what I would say would be normal for it just to be sooty, because just in this area here, but not here like you saw in Michael's engine. But that's how the compression releases work, is they relieve themselves through, it goes through the combustion chamber then into the exhaust port. So a little bit of soot it would not be unusual, but to compare the two, you can see we got quite a bit of difference there with the oil on that one. Definitely running a bit rich on the front cylinder. Yeah, quite a bit rich on front and rear. Let's see what we have. We'll get to the heads in a minute. Sure did. You had a bit of a, John, you had a bit of a head gasket leak on this rear cylinder. Wasn't so much that you could hear it, but you can see here the carbon deposits. It does look like the gasket has slipped a little bit in this area. Now, an interesting thing, if you notice, when I was taking the head bolts loose, there were two that were extremely tight on this head. The other two didn't seem to be too difficult to remove. So it could have been that, yep, here we go again. So, a little bit of a head gasket leak, right? Notice this stud here. Same as the engine yesterday, right there. So we've got a stud that's backed out. It looks like about 4 or 5 threads. This front stud here is backed out maybe about 50 thousandths or so, and the other two are seated. So that explains you are on the brink of having a blown head gasket, and that explains why these were easier to remove, of course. Now, the inside of the cylinder is horrendous. That explains all the carbon buildup we'll get to on top of the piston, and then we'll get into the head. And remember, we were talking about the compression release and such, and some oil infiltration there. But I'm going to wipe this out, and yeah, this cylinder is in very rough shape. Also, been getting very hot. So if you can see on the inside here, see the gold color. It's quite a bit of scoring in this area here, basically on the thrust face of the piston is scored there as well. And it's absolutely slick as glass. And yeah, that cylinder's in pretty rough shape. See if you guys can see there. All right. Where there was, it appears that there was a tight spot in the middle of the cylinder. And let me see if I can show you guys. Look about halfway down the bore. It's there in this area right here. All right, and it's present severely right there. And then also, yeah, there we go, from here down. Let's see if you guys get a good look at this. You should be able to see the discoloration. There we go. All right, see the area along in the middle there? So that explains, you know, this cylinder is definitely egg-shaped, way out of shape, creating that spot in the middle there, and would create some excessive blow-by issues. These cylinders are garbage. So I have a standing rule in the shop. When you have little components like wrist pin clips, you know, when you're taking them out, sometimes they just go flying across the shop. Well, the rule is, if that happens, you always find it. You always find it, and you always throw it away. That way, if one is ever seen laying on the floor, you never have to wonder if you forgot to put one in a motor. The other reason is, there it goes. It's one of those items that can find its way in there. So these are always accounted for when we remove them. You can see all the carbon and carbon flakes from the top of the piston. Again, people sometimes freak out about carbon. Carbon's not exactly a terrible thing. You're supposed to have some buildup up there, but this is incredibly excessive, and it is wet, which is, again, we saw in the cylinder what the cylinders look like. And these are also low tension rings, and so that's not hugely uncommon with that. And then there's a tremendous amount of buildup on that one too. We'll get to that here in a minute. Wrist pin bushings are basically shot. Give you a view of the top of the piston here. See, we've got some pretty excessive flaking. And again, guys, this is all wet. So yeah, it's all wet, so and it's sticky. So it's oil, and we have basically the exact same condition with this one. And again, low tension rings, and we have a tremendous amount of oil carbon buildup up there. Well, let's pull tappets first. Ooh, nasty. Surprise, surprise. John, you got lucky, bud. So, surprise here is the roller on this tappet. See there, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of cam damage. This bearing in this tappet was about to go, and you can see how damaged it is there. How the severe pitting. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So we got one bad tappet there. Of course, we're going to see what that cam lobe looks like. Yeah, that cam, ooh, cams are shot. We'll see more of that here in a second. I want to feel the gear drive. The backlash doesn't feel too bad there. Let's rotate it around. And we're tight right there. Actually really tight with no backlash. A little bit of backlash there. And we're tight there. So it's either going to be a gear fitment. Oh, and we've got, man, we've got severe sumping. You get the idea. We just have oil pouring all along the side of the case. So we have a lot of sumping going on. It's probably, I would say maybe about 2.5 to 3 inches of the crank is buried in oil. Now we can see the exact same issue on the pinion shaft here in the bushing that we saw on Michael's engine. It's not as severe, but we can still see it. And I think our next surprise is going to be just how bad this cam is. Oh yeah, we had a sumper. Sumper for sure. Oh yeah, the cam lobe's destroyed. A little surprise there. So we had a lifter failing, and you guys can see there. Ow! Oh, that's a good one. Dang it. Anyway, man, I gotta get that out. Hang on a minute. Oh, that was a good one. So, yeah, the lifter was going. Actually, we can see here on this, on the lobe there, and especially on this one, it was, yeah, it was ready to go. You guys see that? All right, and the drum roll. So far, not quite as many surprises on this one as we had on Michael's. Of course, we did see we had, let's go through. We had excessive carbon. The cylinders are trashed. We've got cylinder studs that had started backing out. Then we found the lifter getting ready to explode on us. And now we get to see just how bad this crank run out is. All right, it's not terrible. We have right at 5 thousandths run out. Not bad at all. So this is kind of an interesting, this is probably a good time for me to explain something. You know, on a lot of the other videos, especially the M8 ones, we've talked about sumping. And on several occasions, I've mentioned all the different things that can cause sumping. A lot of people assume that it's always a crooked crank, or it's a bad cam plate, or it's a bad oil pump. That's not always the case. Sumping is caused by, the other reason is excessive crankcase pressure. Well, excessive crankcase pressure can be created by blow-by. Every engine, internal combustion engine, has a little bit of blow-by at, it could be at higher RPMs where combustion pressure bleeds past the rings. And this one, after looking at the condition of the cylinders and how badly glazed and cooked and all of that, I would not say that this sumping that he has in this one was caused by crank runout. I think it was because of the issues with the cylinders. Again, the ring seal had faded, wasn't as good as it should be, building up excessive crankcase pressure. When you do that, oil starts to back up in the crankcase and it sumps. So no question he had a severe sumping issue there. 5 thousandths run out on the crank, that's a little too much for gear drive. It could have been that way from the beginning. It could have developed over time. It's really hard to say. There are some ridges, pretty good ridges here in the pinion shaft here. I would not reuse this pinion shaft or this crank halves. So we're going to get him a new crank all the way through on this one. So that's, yeah, those are in pretty bad shape. But we did find out, again, lifter bore, or that one lifter in the cam was getting ready to go as well. So we talked about the carbon buildup. Again, because of the blow-by, because of the sumping, and the oil being picked up by the crank, being sloshed underneath the piston, over-oiling, all of those conditions, all that oil got on top of the piston. That's where the carbon on the piston got there. But also notice here on the head, that's a tremendous amount. That's probably, he was pretty close to carbon hitting piston, actually, because he was using what looked like a 40 thou head gasket. I didn't measure the deck height, but it's going to be relatively close. Regardless, we've got 40 to 50 thousandths at least worth of carbon. And I'm going to lower the camera here, guys, and what I'm going to do is just dump this case over, and we'll see how much oil pours out of it. Of course, you can see there's already quite a bit on the table here. And I don't know if I want to pull. You know what? I'm going to leave the crank spacer in there. Let me get myself enough room here. And we'll just pour it out. And then I'll split this case later. And here we go. Yeah. All right then. Yeah, and the case is still full. That's going to be draining for a while. Let me give you a little better perspective. Yeah. And that'll be draining out for a while. All right, friends, that does it for this one. Again, let's do a quick review. We tear it down. First thing we saw were cylinder studs coming out, right on the very edge of having a head gasket leak. I did get a couple of splinters in my finger from the shredded cam and the lifter on its way out, and the cam destruction. While we only had 5 thousandths run out on this crank, there's a little bit of a tight spot in the rods. I could feel that, but not bad at all. The 5 thousandths run out would not cause me great concern unless you're running gear drive. So the fact we are going to go back with gear drive on this one, then we need to have less than 5 thousandths. But the pinion shaft is definitely worn. More than likely, it's worn due to oil starvation and cavitation of the pump due to the sumping issue. The sumping issue that was created because of either possibly tuned too rich, it could just be mileage. just various different things, and the fact, you know, it had low tension rings on it. Those tend not to last quite as long. So I'm going to say his sumping was caused by excessive crankcase pressure, caused by blow-by and an improper ring seal due to various different reasons. So the next engine on the next video is going to be for Mr. Ken Martin. He has a 2013 Street Glide, and his is a unmodified engine, so we're going to make quite a bit of a swing here in year models. We're going to see various different things. They had different style cam plates, they had different connecting rods. By 13, the wrist pin bushings were eliminated. The process by which they manufactured cranks was a little bit different, and so we're going to see a broad range here, a jump in the twin cam era, and then following that we're going to have some M8s. So guys, thanks a million for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good one.